going to share with you some things that happened to me when I was young. I was born in the South, was raised by 3 parents, 2 grandparents, and 1 mother. That's the way it usually works. My father was pretty much absent from my life. Our circumstances were fairly comfortable. My grandparents were both born just following the Civil War. I tell you this to give you some background on my grandfather's perspective on things. As a young child, I remember having a maid named Clifford and a yard man named Joe. Both were black. In this era, black people were called colored. The woman who worked in our house was called a maid, and the man who took care of the yard was called the yard man. And you know, that's just the way it was. That's what I grew up learning. By the time I was about 5 years old, I loved horses. There was a stable a few miles away. My dear grandfather, who was in his 70s, spoiled me by taking me to ride this horse that was set aside for little kids. The horse's name was Rocking Chair. And as you can imagine, it was very swayback. I was so little when this started that the horse had to be led around the ring. A black man had the job. I remember talking to this man one time when my grandfather was close by and saying, "Yes, sir," and "No, sir." Nothing was said by my grandfather until we got home. Then he told me that we did not address a colored man as sir. I was to call him uncle. Uncle, as in a relative? I didn't have any aunts or uncles. I thought that was weird. I was pretty shocked. So, I just never let my grandfather hear me call him sir again. Fast forward about 2 or so years, I was 7 or 8. My mother didn't have a lot of friends, and with 3 small children to care for, she became friends with our maid Clifford. We lived in what was then the outskirts of Jacksonville, and frequently took the bus downtown. One day around 1949 or 1950, my mother sent Clifford to town. I forget why. Mother let me go with her. The bus came. There's supposed to be a picture of a bus up here. 1950s, 40s era city bus. The bus came, stopped, and we got on. The bus was about 25% full. Started up. Clifford and I sat down about midpoint in the bus. Suddenly, the bus driver slammed on his brakes, got up, walked back to us. He rather loudly said that Clifford and I had to sit in the rear of the bus. I was old enough to know why. If she didn't move, he said he'd kick us off the bus. Now, this was several blocks from where we'd got on. I was so embarrassed for Clifford and for myself. Clifford was no Rosa Parks, so she moved, and I moved with her. My memory's a little foggy here, but I think he stopped again and made me move back to the front. I was too little to do other than what people told me at that time, but I never forgot how ashamed I felt, both for myself and for Clifford. Fast forward to grammar school, probably about the 3rd or 4th grade. If any of you are familiar with Jacksonville, I lived in the Lakeshore area. In the 50s, I attended Lakeshore Grammar and Junior High School. The schools were combined. One day, I saw an older black male student walking down the hall. Schools were not integrated anywhere in the South at this time. Integration didn't happen until after I graduated from high school. I really debated on telling you that because that tells you how old I am. He looked as black as any black person I had ever seen. How could he go to a fully segregated school when a black person in Jacksonville or anywhere else in Florida could not? How could this be? The answer was that he just transferred in. He was a native Hawaiian from Hawaii. What? Hawaii didn't become a state until August of 1959. So it was almost like he transferred in from another country, I guess. And that made the difference. This kid, as it turned out, was among the most popular and the most athletic boys in the entire school. How did segregation make any sense? Fast forward to 1961. I was a sophomore at Jacksonville University. I loved biology. Didn't go quite as far as Carol, but I loved biology. I took invertebrate and then vertebrate biology, and I think that was my sophomore year. Not sure I would have done that if I'd known what the lab project for vertebrate entailed. For lab, we had to independently catch and subsequently kill and pickle, unless they were already dead, then we just pickled them, 30 snakes, at least 5 lizards, several other animals like frogs, toads, and fish, and pickle them with formaldehyde, and somehow obtain and stuff 3 birds. That was really the hardest part. I don't remember it all, but I do remember the snakes. I remember going hunting in a cow pasture with kids who also needed specimens. I also roamed the woods, checked out rotten trees, logs, etc. Sometimes you were surprised. But mostly I drove around Jacksonville at night with my mother looking for startled snakes in the road, or better yet, dead snakes, but not already squished snakes. Despite all this effort, I still didn't have 30 snakes. You may remember Joe from my introduction. So Joe, who was still with us and was a friend, there's just no other way to describe this. I'd grown up with him. He offered to take me to an area where he knew there were lots of snakes near a lake. The only person more afraid of snakes than me was Joe. We were quite a team. Joe drove there since he knew where this place was, and we did manage to catch a few snakes. On our way there, we were followed by someone blowing their horn and shouting at us. Fortunately, they turned off. But Joe and I knew why they'd been so rude. A black man driving with a white girl sitting in the front seat was not acceptable in the South. Conclusion. Other incidences happened to me along these same lines, but these are the ones that I vividly remember. I believe that most of life's lessons are slowly taught to us early in life. These incidences, other than minor in nature, stirred an anger in me about racial injustice that has not ended. Well, justice and injustice. This, I believe, small childhood experiences can shape your views for the rest of your life.